What's going on, everybody? I am here with Zach, Captain Zack George with Fish and Fowl Adventures. Zach, I really appreciate you coming out today.
Absolutely, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. How you been?
I've been well.
Good. Good. I haven't seen you since the waterfowl show.
Yeah, Point Malay.
And even before then, it's been years prior. I mean, what, 3 years maybe before that?
Right, a couple years. That last mud run you went on.
Yeah, that was a good time. It was a good time. Wish I was able to go back, but I'm not cool enough for the old mud boats. You know, I got the old outboard, and it is what it is.
Right.
But how did waterfowl season end up going for you guys?
It went good.
Good.
Good. We, like everybody, the weather was a little different this year, but we managed. One benefit of shooting divers on the Great Lakes is we're not as weather dependent as the marsh hunters and river hunters and different things.
That's true. I mean, from what I've heard anyway, it was tough out there still, though. I mean, they came in, like, there was like one solid push in the beginning of the year, I believe it was, up here anyway. And that was kind of it. Like, there was no freeze up north or anything, and they kind of just stayed north of us, it seemed like.
Yeah, we definitely had to fight the biggest problem we have, which is too many birds, especially when they stick around together.
Not a bad thing, though.
It's not, but when you have rafts of 5,000-10,000, and it's hard to get
compete
them to come to 100 decoys, especially in open water. But.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole thing, and I think we talked about that last time. So those of you listening that don't know Zach, which we'll get to know you better here shortly, but he was at Point Malay with us, and I think it was supposed to be like a 10-minute segment. I think we were on there for like an hour alone, just us.
I think we ripped it for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, but I mean, you know how it is with these podcasts, though. It's like you just start talking, and it just keeps going. It doesn't even feel like you've been talking at all, you know?
We're both talking about stuff we're passionate about. So.
Right. And it's, I don't know, it's very easy to keep going. I get yelled at all the time for it. But I don't know, even for us, though, it was like there was no big push. But, I mean, it sounds like down by you guys, I mean, I'm glad you guys were successful and did a lot better than a lot of people up here, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was definitely an odd year. We had a lot of Lake Erie just in general. Our bluebills show up on a full moon in October, right? So the bulk of them show up then. And then the variety comes with weather, right? So then we'll get different species of divers that come through.
I gotcha.
We didn't see a lot of those big pushes until January this year. And even then, it might not even have been weather dependent. Maybe it was just
that time of year, kind of.
Yeah, the birds have eaten in an area for so long. Now it's time to go try some new food, in a new place. So
that's kind of like our September birds almost, like that September calendar push of those birds up to like Hudson Bay, kind of just pushing their way down. And it's like every year at the same time, they're coming.
Sure.
I guess before we even get too far into like waterfowl season and fishing season coming up, who is Zack George and what is Fish and Fowl Adventures?
Sure. Well, I am me.
Yeah.
So no, I'm a local guy. I live back in Northwest Ohio, which is where I was born and raised. But I did live in Michigan for about 8 years.
Okay.
Before moving back down there, and that's when we met.
Right.
But what Fish and Fowl Adventures is my Lake Erie charter fishing / guided duck hunt operation.
Did you start that now?
Well, so Fish and Fowl Adventures was a business. Well, it was Lake Erie Fishing Adventures.
Okay.
Originally, and Captain Larry Weiss founded that. I want to say probably 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And then when we started duck hunting, so we started adding duck hunting to the portfolio, and I kind of went in with him, changed the name over to Fish and Fowl Adventures.
So it was mostly just fishing then?
It was fishing, yes.
Okay, and that was no hunting, just solid walleye, perch, I'm guessing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then Larry got out of duck hunting a couple years ago, or at least running guided duck hunts, and really was keying in on the fall fishing and the winter fishing. So we just kind of went, a different route.
Right.
And he went back to Lake Erie Fishing Adventures, and I maintained the name then, Fish and Fowl Adventures, as a DBA, and here we are today.
Now, what kind of made you, growing up, get into like the guide service? Like, was there, what was the jump for it? Because we kind of talked about before the podcast started, like,
sure,
you're buddy hunting, you're growing up into it and stuff, and now it's just not like a buddy hunt. It's it's a job.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, what kind of prompts you to get into that kind of?
Well, I was one of those crazy little kids that would wake up super early before school, and I would literally sit and watch fishing shows.
One of those guys.
I would watch Bill Dance. I would watch Roland Martin.
The old Tennessee hat on him.
Jose Wahebe and the Spanish fly, and I always wanted to fish for a living. When I grew up, I just didn't know how.
Right.
How was that possible?
So many different steps. I mean, now with social media, it's a little easier, but back then,
sure, yeah. And plus back then, you're looking at these guys that are in these like far off exotic places, not Toledo, Ohio.
Right.
Right. So I had a bunch of different cracks at trying to figure out something in the outdoor industry, whether it be competitive archery or leasing out a private marsh and running guided hunts, and then now the charter business. And even that kind of started as, well, I'll get a couple clients and I'll work my way towards maybe retirement one day, and then I'll do my main job, and then maybe I'll do the guide business and know the people I'm hunting and fishing with, and then that kind of took off a little faster than expected, and now I'm I don't know. I mean, I love it. I know you talked earlier about it being a job. Like it definitely is a job, but the job of it is the client relations.
I mean, do you feel like the same way? I guess I don't even know how to put it. Like, you're buddy hunting. There's no real pressure, even though I'm hitting that ditch line with a roll of toilet paper every morning because I'm a little nervous to make sure the hunt's going good. But I mean, is there still like that passion behind it, or is it more just like of a job? You know what I mean? Like there's got to be a little bit of a change up because you're not pulling the trigger, right?
No, but I'm more passionate now than I ever was.
Really?
Yeah. And actually, the pressure when I actually do get a chance to fun hunt or fun fish, the pressure is higher for me because I get to take, whether it be my wife or one of my good buddies, when 10 years ago that was a lot.
Right.
Now it's 1, 2, 3 times a year, so the pressure's on even more for me. But
because you're a captain, you got the whole outfitter going on.
Yeah. My fun days better be good days too.
Yeah, no kidding.
But no, I just honestly I love sharing my passion for the outdoors.
I gotcha.
So even though I might not have a gun in my hand and pulling the trigger, during duck hunts, or I might not be the guy reeling in the 10-pound, 30-inch walleye, on Lake Erie.
Kicking kids over, reeling it in for them.
Yeah. But I get to teach people that stuff.
That's awesome.
And honestly, like my hardest day outside, or my worst day, if you could consider it that, is my client's best day. So every day I get the chance to be with people that are excited to be there. So it's hard not to love it.
That's the big thing for me. Like I say it time and time again on the podcast where like we don't guide or anything. We just buddy hunt. Anybody that wants to come out and hunt with us, like just get a hold of me. But you better keep getting a hold of me like all week. Don't feel like you're bugging me because I'm going to forget about it.
Right.
But, I barely take the gun out of the case half the time. The smiles on everybody else's face, like the Snapchats that I'm looking at after the hunt, like that's kind of what keeps driving me because then that's what, everybody else is happy about it. Everybody, gets it for a little bit.
Do you want to know what we call that?
What's that?
Maturity.
Yeah, oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, it's one of those things too where, say we shoot 10 to 15 birds and guys are like, oh man, yeah, it was okay, but it could have been a lot better. And it's like, dude, we just shot 10, 15 birds in a dry field. We didn't have to worry about anybody else out here. Like it could have been a little bit better, but who cares, man? We're out here.
Still a darn good day.
It gets tough in those aspects for us with not guiding and stuff. And, even for guiding for you, I feel like it had to have been a point in time in your career where the clientele that you were getting were kind of back and forth with, wishy-washy about the amount of birds that they were getting or the amount of fish that they were getting.
Yeah, I think every group is different. I've been doing this long enough now to just essentially know how I need to change my personality based upon who I'm with for the day. But not in a bad way. It's just, there's certain crews that you need to be more educational with, right? There's certain crews where you got to cater to the little kids they have with them, not the adults, you know? So it's just everybody has a little bit of a different need.
Kind of see what they want out of everything, yeah.
But, my industry, the ultimate gauge of success is what's my rebook rate, right? So how do I get you to come back again next year? And a lot of times it's not because you killed the most or caught the most.
It's got to be, I mean, especially in your guys' aspect, I mean, half the time I don't want to say half the time, but a lot of the time is spent in the boat. So you're talking to those guys constantly. It's like a field hunt per se, it's, not the awkward silence, or, you're able to communicate and talk to these people and get to know them better instead of not at all, I guess,
I mean, that's exactly where I'm at now with it. Like, it's, I'm coming up on the spring fishing season. The majority of the people I have booked over the next month on my Maumee River trips are all repeat. I think I have 3-4 new people this year, and that's awesome to see people year after year and reconnect on, to see how their years went, to pick up on, what did your kids do this year? What did your wife do this year? How's your house project?
See a little family in an aspect,
And it is like, it's funny, again, I hear that it's a job a lot, but to me, I just go hunting and fish with my buddies every day. And it's just, my buddies might be paying clients who live out of state, or my buddies might be somebody who lives an hour from here that just wants to fish with me.
I mean, that's a really good way to put it, for sure. And then obviously you need it's going to take years to get to that point to be able to, find that good base of clientele. I mean, starting off, it had to have been tough, even just getting the name out there, no?
Yeah, I mean, starting off, it was interesting to kind of live and learn. You make mistakes. I think that as any business starter or entrepreneur does, but you learn, and like you and I talked earlier before the podcast, you just, you got to be willing to make those mistakes and learn from them and move forward,
Now, for, we talked about it before. Some of like the biggest downfalls of it all, that marsh you were trying to build and stuff. How are you, like, there's always, I talked to my buddy last week about this, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. And it always seems like everybody gets to a certain point and they don't, like what I talked about, like, you get to a point and then you just got to find that one thing to kind of crest that hill, and then you're good. You're there, Was there ever a point with guiding or chartering or anything where, it's almost like, man, do I really even want to do this anymore? Do I want to keep going with this? Or how did you overcome that kind of point? If there was a point, maybe there wasn't.
Again, I said that I tried to make different cracks at the outdoor industry. So I may have had those times then, but once I started guiding, no, I really haven't. Now maybe I may change my thought process of what does my 5 or 10 year plan look like, right? So do I scale the business up? Do I scale the business down? Do I focus energy elsewhere? Do I change what I'm doing? I mean, you're always, I think, trying to learn and trying to tweak little things to get a better, I guess, personal satisfaction out of what you're doing. Right. But no, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
Where do you guys see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Honestly, for me, right now, I'm at a point where the business has shrunk, right? So I had 2 partners before. Now I'm down to just myself. I'm a single operator. And that is at least right now my long-term goal, to maintain the single operator status. I am a little bit of a control freak, which...
You almost kind of have to be, in a sense, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you have clients, you got to make sure everything's going proper, like, right. I mean, you want to have a well-oiled machine when you're getting out there.
I can... When I'm with the client every day, I can control typically, what product they're presented with, right? And at this point, I don't feel like I'm ready to bring on staff, buy a bunch of more boats, and expand that. One day that may be a thing. I mean, is it a possibility? Is it something I've looked into? Yes, definitely. But at this stage, in my life, I really like knowing who I'm hunting and fishing with every day, and kind of seeing these same people every single year.
And I feel like it's got to be tough too, even getting like a second hand on deck, or whether it be fishing or hunting or whatever it may be. If he's not going into it with the same attitude as you are, he's got a bad day. I mean, who knows what could possibly happen with the client? I mean, you could flip out on a client for not knowing when he really just didn't know. I mean, it's always gotta.
Everybody's human, you're gonna run there. I mean, even me, I don't.
Right.
I don't. I'm sure there's people that I rub wrong that have fished with me or hunted with me in the past, and although that's never my intent, that's just a reality. It's going to happen. But
you talked about the Maumee, and the Maumee for me is a spot where I've always heard about how well the fishing is there.
Yeah,
I've never personally fished there, but I've always been told like the banks are just absolutely loaded with people, and if you cross somebody over, they're screaming at you, and I just have never wanted to get into that. But for the last 2 years, I believe, you've been on the news for the Maumee.
Yeah.
But out of a boat.
Yeah.
So kind of go through like your Maumee trips and stuff, I guess.
Sure. So the Maumee River is the largest watershed into any Great Lake in the country. And Lake Erie holds a very bountiful, highest population ever of walleye. But we get a lot of fish that come into that river and spawn. Now, by no means is it a majority of the fish from Lake Erie, right? They spawn on the reefs out there. But as far as a per cubic foot of water, there's more walleye in the Maumee River during the peak of the run than there is anywhere else in the world at any time.
Okay.
So it is a little tight, right? It's a shallower river than maybe what you're used to up here with the Detroit River.
Right.
Pretty much the entire spawn ground, which is where you see people fish, just based upon them looking for a certain bottom type. They want gravelly rock. They want not a lot of mud. They want current. So it's definitely elbow to elbow on the banks, especially the public access spots.
I'm sure.
And then, boating can be tight as well because of the fact that it's a shallow river, right? So you get guys in chest waders that walk
all the way
further
out
than they need to be. But by being in a boat, I'm a lot more maneuverable than a guy that's walking waders, right? I can get to a lot more places a lot quicker.
Is there a lot of boats out there?
There are.
Are there really?
Yeah, absolutely. You just have to know the river well. So a lot of boats will launch at Schroeder's Campground.
Okay.
And which is right kind of smack dab in the center of the fishing area. And then they will fish right there within 100 yards of the boat.
Oh.
So and that's literally, if you launch there during a lot of times of the season, that's the only place you can fish because it's real shallow above and it gets shallow below that area.
So you only have that one pocket and that's it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So that's where you just got to kind of know the area, and it can be intimidating for somebody who maybe drives across 75 or 475 and sees all those people. But the reality is just like anywhere, people are going to be nice to you. Like, just pay attention. Pay attention a little bit before you maybe walk in and start casting over people and tangling them. But
now, how are you fishing that though? Are you casting? I mean, because like for me up here, obviously we're just used to jigging and trolling. Sure. But I mean, how is that over there?
So I would call it like a cast drift, right?
Okay.
So typically, even by a boat, we're anchored, we're not moving, right?
Gotcha.
So we are not drifting. It's our lure doing the drifting. So we're casting, we'll say towards the middle of the river. Mm-hmm. Typically, if I'm looking at a clock, depending on which face, which way of the river I'm facing, I usually want to be 1 hour away from 12 o'clock upstream.
Okay.
Right? So 1 o'clock if I face one direction, 11 o'clock if I face a different direction.
Right.
And then I'm quickly reeling up my slack, maybe 3 or 4 cranks of your reel. And then at that point, I'm just watching my rod tip bounce, right? So my weight is staying in contact with the bottom while I'm using a Carolina rig. So my floating jig head is swaying side by side behind that weight. And anytime there's any subtle differences, whether it be a rod tip holding down for 1 millisecond longer,
right,
or maybe it's going tap, 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 and all of a sudden there's a pause and there's no tap. That could be a fish touching it.
Right.
And, that's a time to set the hook. So it's one of those things, you got to set a hook on a lot of rocks before you start really understanding the difference of the subtle bite. But they're there, and they're spawning and they're ready to not necessarily be caught, but just based upon science, they're facing up current and lures are coming down current. So if something touches you in the mouth, typically you're going to swat it away. Well, if something touches them in the mouth, they don't have hands, so they're going to snap at it, and bite it away. So.
And that's what like a lot of people like, even in the Detroit River. Like I think it was like 2 weeks ago. People are like, "Oh man, we're hammering them up in like mid river." It's like no, they're there, but you can't say you're like hammering them right now. Sure. You're just like getting it in the right spot most of the time. I mean, the Maumee is known for giant fish. Yep. I would say anyway, from what I know about it all. Like I said, I've never been down there or whatever, but you always hear about the big fish coming out of the Maumee. What's kind of your guys' average down there? A lot of males or females?
So primarily the fish that are caught are spawning jacks, right?
Okay.
And every year it changes are based upon the population.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever look at like a fish graph, usually your year 2 fish are the highest percentage of a pie chart population. Year 3 is when they reach sexual maturity, which is, a little bit smaller than that year 2. But right now, with the way the fish population and the spawning, rates have been, success rates. The average fish I'd say this year is probably going to be in the 20 to 22 inch range.
Perfect fish.
So it's your great eater size fish.
Right.
Now there is a decent amount of large females. Usually when the large females are caught, they're caught around the same time period. Like right now is a good time to catch some early spawners that are coming in. And then you're going to wait a couple weeks, and the peak of your run, which, depending on the year, is going to be sometime between the first week April and the second week April. So usually towards the tail end of that peak is when you start catching females again, in large numbers. Because remember, these fish aren't here to eat, to be caught. Right. They're here to spawn. So it can catch big fish, but usually I tell people it's not necessarily that you're there for the big fish. I mean, because if you want to pay me for a fishing charter, I'm going to tell you to come to Lake Erie during cold water, right? So come to Lake Erie in the fall, come to Lake Erie before we're jigging on the reefs, right? Before the spawn. That's when you want to come target the biggest fish. But it's not every day you have a medium action rod in your hand and you have a chance to catch a 10-pound walleye, especially in heavy current when a walleye opens its mouth, and now you're having to not only fight a heavy fish on a light rod, but now you're having to fight a fish in heavy current with rocks and different things. So.
We were out there messing around in the middle of summer last year, and I had a perch rod on my boat, and we were jigging for smallmouth because I had a guy that I knew that was catching a lot of smallmouth out there.
Sure.
So we were just jigging, seeing what we would catch, and I was surprised on how many walleye I caught, but the fight on just like a perch rod, it was
pretty awesome,
insane compared to your jigging rod, a little heavier duty. I think mine's like medium heavy, or I could be wrong on that even, but I've always wanted to go out there with like that perch rod or like that real light action rod to actually feel the fight. Now for you guys out there, and this is like a huge debate, and it always will be a huge debate, the big females. Are you guys throwing them back? What are you guys doing with them? Because I got my own opinion on it. I'm kind of curious on what you think about it.
So I see it from a lot of different angles. Typically, like me personally, especially in the river, because those fish more than likely came from that river. I grew up there. I fished that river 30 days consecutive pretty much every year now for 30 years.
Right.
I'm going to usually throw that fish back.
Okay.
But I'm never going to even ask a client to throw that back, right? So if they want it, they're keeping it.
Right.
Same thing with Lake Erie. I mean, usually, again, I'm one guy. My humble opinion is when I catch a big female, if it's not going on the wall, there's a lot of meat that you're not getting in the size of that fish because of the stomach full of eggs, right?
It's like a perch.
Yes.
Those big perch are huge because of the eggs.
We're pretty blessed where if I throw a big female back, I'm probably going to replace it with a nice eating size jack pretty shortly thereafter.
Right.
So if I'm there just to catch meat, and just to eat, usually I'm throwing them back and I'm catching males. But I'm not one of these people that like, oh my God, everyone has to come back.
Dogging on you for it.
Because personally, I feel like, especially right now, the population is so high. I mean, based upon what the ODNR tells us, we barely put a dent in 1% of the population every year, so I don't really think it matters. Now, if population was lower, maybe that's a different conversation. But
I mean, I guess I'll say I'm pretty ignorant on, the biologist kind of standpoint of it all. But in my opinion, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there to see what you would have to say about it. You have these 10, 12, 13-pound walleye that are being caught out there. How old do you think that fish is when they're, get to that big? I mean, how old are they, do you think?
A 10-pound walleye, female walleye on Lake Erie is typically going to be 20-plus years old.
So do you think that fish is still fertile, I guess? Or because in my opinion, it's almost like one of those things where those giant fish, and like I said, I don't know it all, but I feel like the younger fish that are smaller, just those fat, chunky little footballs that you catch out there are going to be laying and more fertile than, which obviously it's the male doing a lot too, but is going to have fresher eggs than the big, old, mature females.
I don't want to say something I don't know because I'm not 100% sure, but the couple things I do know is a walleye only spawns once a year. Large fish is going to hold more volume of eggs.
But you think those eggs are still...
Well, that's the thing. That I don't know. But based upon the way they broadcast spawn, in my mind anyways, and I may be
Right.
totally wrong on this, the more eggs a male has to inseminate with its spawn, or broadcast spawning, the higher likelihood I would think anyways
Right.
that more success would happen. But what it comes down to a lot of times with walleye is, are they going to get silted over? So our eggs that are laid on a reef or laid in rocks, they're going to get silted over with mud, right? We're going to get rain
Solid
after
point.
a big spawn, and is it going to get suffocated?
Right.
And as long as that doesn't happen, which it hasn't now in quite a few years, we keep seeing record after record after record after record.
Right.
So it's pretty neat.
I don't know. There's just so many like small details that like, the Facebook warriors and, all these warriors are just screaming at people for no reason. It's just, I don't know, one of those things where you might as well like record a movie off of the Facebook warriors out there. You can never say anything right.
I typically don't debate anything with anyone.
Because it's going to be a losing battle, like no matter what. Like somebody's going to. I did say one time this year, and I was so tempted not to, but there was a guy on Facebook, and I forget what page it was or forum, and he shot a whole flock of banded geese, and seemed like he was just real tickled to death about it. First time ever doing it. He said, first comment, yeah, it's not that special. I do it all the time, and it's like, dude.
Terrible attitude.
What, like, that just made the guy's like year, maybe even next year that he just shot all those. Like, what is it to you if it's not that big of a deal for you? There's just so many of those like just haters out there, and I don't understand why.
I don't understand either, because I'm typically one of the mindset that says if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say anything at all. But I don't know. I guess it gives some people kicks to know more than others, or to be more cynical than others.
It's a strange kick, I'll tell you that.
It is very strange. I'm not very familiar with it.
No, me either. How long does a mommy usually run for?
Well, it all depends. So I run my trips for 1 month.
Okay.
The last week of March through the third week of April. And because I book in advance, we have a high success rate during that, 1 month every year. Now, this year with the weather, and really a lot of years, if people can fish, if there is open water, people will catch walleye in February in the Maumee River. It usually starts with some of the resident fish.
So it's pretty early then. It starts off.
Yeah, which, the Detroit's the same way. If you can fish it, you can catch a fish
right.
in that early. But you don't start seeing the larger populations of fish that are actually coming to spawn until we start getting some warm rains, right? 40 degrees is usually the mark. As soon as that river reaches 40 degrees, it's surging, nutrient-rich, muddy water into Lake Erie that's warmer than Lake Erie. Those fish are coming into that warm water. They're wanting to spawn.
I mean, pretty close on what we are. Now, do you do any charters like out this way?
Not anymore. Nope. I let my Michigan expire recently. I just didn't use it. When I first got into this, I had this grand gesture idea of running trips in Detroit River, Maumee River, and Lake Erie, and running duck hunts on Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair and stuff, and it's just one of these things that, for me, again, doing things how I like to do it, which is being in control a little bit more than others. I like to be around my local area, the most. Which
isn't a bad thing. So, I mean, Maumee closes off. You guys aren't fishing that anymore. What are you guys doing? You guys still...
So I'll move right to the lake.
Okay.
So typically, like growing up, my favorite time to fish the Maumee River anyways was usually the last week April through mid-May. Mm-hmm. And you notice how I didn't tell you those 3 weeks that I run trips. Well,
no.
The reason being is the water gets lower.
Mm-hmm.
The April rains, stop, which were really March rains for us.
March
rains, early April rains. They stop, and we start. It's a post-spawn bite, but there's white bass in there, which are fun to catch. You drop down
especially
your tackle
with the kids
a little bit.
and stuff.
Yep, but we just haven't had water where it's been so low
really?
The last couple of years. Actually, the last 2 years in a row, I've had to move all of my last week of April Maumee River trips to Lake Erie because I didn't have enough water to boat. So, that became a bit of a logistical nightmare, to try to move 18 trips in 9 days from a river to a lake,
Having people be okay with that kind of movement.
Yeah. Plus, it's, I run 2-guy trips on the river, whereas the lake boat holds 6, so that's always, interesting to say, all right, well, you can bring more if you want, and
yeah.
So this year, or actually last year, I made that decision with that group of people. I just let them know, hey, I'm not going to run this week anymore. These are my dates. I can get you in, earlier if you want river trips, but I'm going to book this week. I'm going to start the lake, the 4th week of April.
I mean, to a point, they got to understand, though, right? I mean, with water levels,
nobody wants you to take them someplace where they can't catch fish,
right?
So
well, yeah,
everybody was very understanding.
Yeah, that too.
It was just hard for me to make that decision because I've just enjoyed fishing that river that time so much through my life.
Well, you said you grew up doing it, so it's like just a home almost. You're so used to just everything in there. There's a lot of snags in there too.
There is. You have, I joke that I don't professionally fish in the spring. I professionally knot tie.
Yeah.
Because we're casting. We're not trolling. My fishermen are fishing rod in hand.
Right.
And usually it's them
Snag
fishing, getting
city.
snagged, and I have one extra rod, and I'm always passing. I'm always tying knots, and I'm handing a guy that just lost his lures the good rod, and he's handing me the bad one to retie.
It gets so frustrating sometimes, even jigging like the river up here, but it's
sure you
like,
get downriver and
it's bad.
Oh yeah,
it's bad, and it's hard to stay almost positive in a sense where you got a new guy in the boat and you want him to catch fish and stuff. And I remember last year even I took 2 of my buddies out, and the one guy, I don't know if he's ever caught a walleye or it's been a few years since he's caught a walleye. Me and my buddy limited out, and the other guy could not catch a fish, like, to save his life. Don't know what he was doing wrong, or like getting snagged up all the time. Like they don't realize how fast, like, or that 1 second you're not paying attention to it, you're done for.
It is. I mean, most of this, especially the spring biting with walleye, it's such a reactionary hit, and it's so fast for them to snap at something and then spit a lure out. Yeah. So you got to be quick. You don't have to be the hammer setter, but you got to be quick at least to lift the rod.
It's like some of these guys are ripping the lips right off of the fish.
Oh yeah,
which is crazy though too. It's like how many fish do you lose right at the boat, and you have, for us on the river, you got your main hook and you got your stinger. So your treble hook on the back. So we'll say 4 hooks.
Yeah,
and it's like, how does a fish get off of that?
I don't know. I tell you what though, I wish I could have that in the Maumee River. So the Maumee River, we're limited to a single hook on the line.
Really?
And it cannot be larger than a 1/4 inch diameter from shank to point. So
wow.
I want to say it's, I think it's a 1/0 is the largest it can be. And I may be wrong on that. Don't hold me to it.
Right.
I don't make my own. I buy them from a guy that makes them by the thousands. But that is very limiting. At the same time, there's so many fish in there. And honestly, if you were casting a treble hook, you'd be snagging a fish every single cast. So
it's that thick in there.
Oh yeah.
Because my cousin lives up north in Bay City on a river, and they actually close the river down in the springtime just because how thick they are.
A lot of rivers up north do.
Yeah. That's
actually the Saginaw River. Last year was the first year they allowed fishing through March. It's been closed for a little while now.
I don't know that. I've only fished up there once. And it's almost like a, I get asked all the time to like go on guided duck hunts and stuff like that, and it's almost like, why move when you have it here, kind of thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, especially like if I'm going out on like a guided bird hunt, something crazy that you don't usually shoot if you're going out to like Arkansas to shoot a bunch of pintails or widgeon out west, whatever it is. I don't want to spend money if I could just do the same thing here. So I go up to Saginaw when we have them here. They might be catching them sooner than us, but ours will be here eventually, Yeah. So I don't know. I've never spent much time up there to really.
It's a cool area.
Pay attention to.
We're very like if I'm on a boat on Lake Erie, pretty much everywhere I'm at, if I can see shore, I'm looking at a power plant.
Mm-hmm.
Up there, once you get out of the Saginaw River and you get into Saginaw Bay and Lake Huron, it's a different story. You might see windmills, but
it's just that far out. You're saying?
Well, no, it's just there just
isn't.
It's not as industrialized as Detroit and Toledo and Cleveland. So it's just a little bit more of a natural feel, I guess, up there. So you ought to go try it just to try something new.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense though, because I mean I never even really looked at it that way.
And it's not that far. I mean, for you, what, 3 hours? Not even.
Maybe 2. Yeah. 2.5 maybe. I mean, plus we get with most of the families up that way, so I mean it's not something crazy to go up there and spend the night out there.
Kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Exactly.
This is the podcast for that, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I just the Maumee I've always wanted to try, and then like for you guys too, are you guys just planer boards out on the lake?
Primarily. So I do like to run small boards on on my personal boat. That's just how I like to do things. There's a lot of guys that'll run the big boards.
I was gonna say, have you ever done that?
I have, yeah.
How easy is that compared to like just running the small boards?
Well, I think they're both easy. It's
There's
just personal
both benefits
preference.
to
I mean, it's like Ford Chevy. You know, some guys are Ford diehards, some guys are Chevy diehards, and
don't
some
even
guys
get
don't
started
care and
on
they'll
this
do both.
podcast.
You know what I mean? But like,
Right.
it's the same type of thing with that.
Right.
They both have the places that they shine. I don't like having cables and mast. So for me, my North River is an open platform boat, right? So I have an
Awesome
open
boat
floor.
too.
And if I was to run large boards on that, I'd have to have a mast on my bow, and I'd have to have cables coming off of that, which would take up some of my floor space, right? So I just prefer to not have to deal with that, you know.
Definitely makes sense.
Plus, there's ways to be really effective with the little boards.
I mean, so how many boats? I mean, are you just running the North River on the lake?
Yeah.
How many guys do you usually have on your charter, like 31 fishing trip in the summertime?
Up to six.
Up to six guys?
Yeah, so my rates, it's a 1 to 4 to get the boat, and then it's an additional charge for a fifth or a sixth.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, I get plenty of people that come with 1 or 2 people. You
Right.
know? So it just everybody's different.
Now, what about your duck hunting?
Duck hunting is the same.
Same thing.
1 to 4 base.
Keeping
fifth
it
is a little
easy
extra.
and
Yeah.
simple.
Yep. Prices are different, but
Right. And then you guys are just all, I mean, solid diver hunting, basically.
yes, yeah. I primarily specialize in layout boat hunting for diver ducks.
Now, have you guys ever thought of, kind of switching it up? I know, like, we talked about the March and stuff like that you tried at one point.
Sure.
Have you ever kind of thought about inland stuff or kind of?
Not really inland stuff, but I think I see myself in the next couple of years going to offering boat blind hunts as well for divers on the big water. Some of my groups, whether it be back problems or aging out of the mobility aspect of the layout hunting, are starting to request that a little bit. So I just got to hit the drawing board and kind of figure out how I can make a blind for my boat that's very removable, right? Because
especially on a boat that size.
Well, that, and you have a 14-foot by 7-foot layout boat that's inside that boat, so that's going to have to be moved out to put a blind on
constantly back and forth.
So there's just logistic stuff with that I got to figure out. But I think I see myself going to that option of having both in a while. But I want to make sure that, layout boating is never going to not be my primary focus for that.
Now, what kind of got you into like that, like layout boat hunting compared to like I know the picture behind you there. Yeah,
So what you can't see on the podcast is I'm leaning up and I'm pointing at a painting that Kyle has on his wall.
Yeah.
This painting is 2 guys in a layout boat with a couple hundred hand-carved bluebill decoys around them in the open water, and then they have a flock of bluebills essentially setting down into the spread. So layout hunting to me is the perfect mixture of the social aspect of fishing, right, and duck hunting, being able to be with your friends, but then the solitude or the being out in the animals environment, like big buck hunting. It mixes both, and it's chess, man. Like, how do you get a bird that can choose any of hundreds of thousands of square miles of water to come into 100 yards of you and your layout hunters? So
yeah, that's I don't know. That's another point that you make that never even really thought of it in that aspect of it all. I've been asked to, and I don't know if you get a lot down by you guys. Like, there's just so many people around here, as you know.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing, but a lot of fighting in the morning and whatnot, what have you.
Yeah, we don't deal with that when we're layout hunting.
So you guys don't really have anybody down there like that.
No, that's one beautiful thing about Lake Erie is it is so large.
Right.
That, there's guide services that are starting to get into it a little bit. But when I was younger and getting started, like, we would go out there and you'd see 4 or 5 rigs every day when you're out. Now I don't. It's
crazy.
I think this year there was maybe 5 days where I was out there and there was even one other rig in the open water. Now there's plenty of guys shore hunting.
Right.
But, the layout hunting's a whole different animal. And really, I think, what it comes down to is it's very equipment intensive, right? So you got to have a lot of equipment, and it can't be piddly stuff. Like you need stuff. Now, it doesn't have to be brand new, but
especially
you got to have a big boat. You got to have a layout boat. You got to have a bunch of decoys.
Right.
You got to have like 4 anchors on your boat. You know, you got to have a bunch of extra stuff you wouldn't normally have. And more than that, you got to have at least 2, if not really, you should have 3 experienced people that can do it enough with you during the course of the season to justify all of that stuff. Plus, once you get all that stuff in the boat, you're not pulling it out to go fishing the next day. Like the stuff stays for the whole season, you know? So, so I think it's just it's an old way of wing shooting that you know, the modern day hunter you know, might not see the return on the investment of the old meat hunters, you know, back in the day. And but I love it, man. I love the history of it in our area. I love being out there in the open water. It's just neat. There's nothing else like it.
I mean, that's one thing, like with waterfowl hunting in general. I didn't grow up doing it. Family never grew up doing it.
Me neither.
And that's kind of what, like, I took, like, appreciation for it, or like just getting to know the history behind it all. And you know, it could be the most basic thing ever, but just knowing, like, you know, with the hand carved decoys, or, you know, layout boats around here. I mean, like, the history just keeps on going, and it's just, it's such a neat thing for me to just keep learning. There's so many things to learn. Like, you learn stuff all the time about the history, and I think that's almost like a losing thing nowadays too. Like, people don't look at it that way.
They don't. I mean, I think that's society in general.
I mean, look at the decoys that you bought at the festival. I mean, those were...
Yeah, I mean, so that's another thing. Like, I hunt only over, even on my guided hunts, Northwest Ohio, handmade foam decoys.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah. And I talk about it, and I educate people on the differences between the different decoy makers. But I would say out of the 96 decoys that I run on a daily basis on those hunts, 80 of them are at least 30 years old. Some of them maybe 50 or 60 years old.
Wow.
So there is a few, you know, that are a little bit younger, but either way, they were made here. And to me, that's neat. Like, thinking about the fact that some guy in the 70s was making these decoys in his garage, selling them to his buddies, you know, and I can hunt with them 50 years later, and they still do the exact job they did back then. To me,
the stories,
really cool. Oh, man.
Those decoys could tell. Dude,
and you know, the funny thing is having clients come back year after year, like, they remember shooting that specific decoy the year prior. Like, they'll call it out. They'll be like, you didn't fix that thing from last year, you know? So it's pretty fun.
No, that is a cool thing. That's what one of our guys, it was opening day of goose season this year. And I don't know if you've seen it or not. We had this little flooded cornhole that we hunted a few times this year.
You killed some birds there.
It was incredible over there. Had a flock of geese come in with another flock right behind it, so I let that first group touch down. As soon as the second group touched their toenails on the water, let them have it. Yeah. One of our guys pull up, blow apart the first decoy he's seen, completely missed the goose, and it's like, dude, what are you shooting at right now? But you know, we still have that goose now, but just now for the future wise, like the history and like just the laugh that we'll get out of it every single time. I mean, it's priceless.
You know, and that's the thing. Like, earlier we talked about the volume of birds you shoot or the fish you catch, and the reality is you don't remember that.
No,
you remember that story. You remember that experience. Right. Is what you remember.
Right.
So, and that's what matters the most.
I don't know how to get like people back into like that kind of mindset. You know, and you kind of you talked about it with like the maturity levels of it all, but you know, people are so like, they'll say what you want to hear kind of thing to your face, which, you know, every person's different with it all, like, teaches their own, but the respect level and the future going onward with it all, it's I don't know how to get people back into the true passion behind it all. You know, like what we just talked about, like just the simple stories and stuff. There's just so many back and forth fighting and just nonsense that goes on anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody's in such a rush, you know, and everybody's in a rush for time and a rush to post a better picture online or to maybe make a comment that might be disparaging, like you talked about, just to maybe make themselves feel a little bit better. But, you know, the reality is that if people just slowed down a little bit, started,
took it in.
just started like actually maybe having a conversation to understand and not necessarily just to respond, like, I think that, life would be a little bit more fulfilling, so anytime you can get somebody maybe that you're hunting and fishing with, make mention. Like, I talk about the weirdest shit when I'm hunting and fishing. I'm serious, man. I'll talk about the sun coming up. I'll talk about, like, I'll take pictures of fish in the water, like, glistening, and I'll be like,
that's
look,
the cool
I'll show
stuff,
them on my
man.
phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, look at this. It's sweet. And they're
Yeah.
like, some guys will be like, it's a 15-inch walleye. Who gives a shit?
It's
but
like,
I'm
no,
like,
but the picture, man.
Yeah, look at that, so.
It's like the video I showed you on the thing that's not working right now. It's like, just like the small like, we didn't even see a deer that hunt.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, but like, check this video out I got of it. You know what I mean? It's just
That's
like the
cool.
small stuff that people don't appreciate with it. Like you said, though, they just moving too fast.
I think they do, though. They do if they take the time to observe it. But I think sometimes people are in such a rush that they just don't naturally take that time. So anytime you can point those things out to people, that could be your way of helping them maybe appreciate that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, for sure. You did mention too that you don't get a lot of layout boat pressure down by you guys. I don't know about Ohio, but Michigan, I want to say, started the whole new guide law that you got to go through a bunch of hoops, and I guess, what's your kind of output? Because from what I understand is you can't get that random person to just shoot one good hunt out in the field somewhere and all of a sudden say that they're guide service.
Sure.
Is that down in Ohio too, or is that just a Michigan thing?
The thing you're referring to is just a Michigan thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I know a little bit about it, not a lot.
Right.
And I know there has been, Ohio has different regulations. Like one thing that anybody has to have, if you have a paying customer on a vessel on the Great Lakes or any navigable waterway, which is Detroit River, certain rivers, around the Great Lakes, you got to have a Coast Guard license, which doesn't
really affect you guys that much in that aspect of it all.
No. But here's where I think a lot of guide services maybe get a little frustrated, right? So if I operate a business on the Great Lakes, I have to be federally licensed, right? I have to have insurance. I have to have Department of Transportation drug testing programs I'm in. I have to, I am very regulated just to do that business. So sometimes they see a deer outfitter or a dry field operator in the state, and they think, well, why am I regulated so much, but this guy isn't?
Right.
My stance on it is no matter what, you're going to have bad apples. That's just a reality. Usually in most demographics, it's a small percentage, but you're always going to have a bad apple.
Right.
I don't like a lot of extra regulation. Like personally, I think that we can have some common sense regulations. I like it on a state level versus a federal level because I think that you can customize it to your local area a little bit better that way. But I'm definitely never opposed to having an open dialogue about stuff like that. I just don't personally like when stuff is you're just told, hey, it's just going to be like this. It is what it is. This is what we decided. So I like to be involved in that stuff if I can be.
I mean, like for us up here, I feel, there are some of those, like I said, some kids see it on social media or whatever, and there's so many different pages popping up nowadays, and they have one good hunt now, and all of a sudden they're a guide service trying to take clients out there, which I feel like it is a good thing for guys that are trying to make a living off of it.
Yeah, you gotta, I guess anything I would always tell like a paying clientele, just do a little bit of research. A lot of times, even if you look just at somebody's Facebook profile, you can tell. But website, Google, a lot of your fly-by-night stuff won't have Google reviews.
Right.
Like that's a thing you'd think any business would have, but
You'd be surprised.
in the outfitting industry, it's not every single business has that. So, do a little bit of that because the reality is, man, you're playing, especially in the Great Lakes, you're playing with some dangerous environment.
For sure.
In any hunting, you have firearms involved. Like you should make sure that you're going to reputable people. Again, being in this industry, I think 95 to 99% of people are stand-up, business operators just trying to provide for their family and show people a good time outdoors. So I think if with a little bit of research, you could make sure you get put with the right person, you know.
And I think we both know some people that it's like, how is that person still even running right now? But obviously not dropping any names, but you touched on it a little bit there though. You have guns in the boat. You got clients on a little bit of rough water. What's like your kind of go-to, the biggest thing that you like look for, make sure nothing goes wrong, or like you're kind of, I mean, do you put, like for me anyway, I kind of tell guys that, maybe they hunt with us 1 or 2 times a year, like, hey, listen, we got dogs out with us, which that's another thing I just want to talk to you about too. We got dogs with us. They might jump, they might burn a flock. Don't get upset. Like, but if that dog jumps, I don't care who it is. Nobody's pulling the trigger. I don't care what's in front of you. Nothing. I mean, is there a kind of a conversation for you out there?
Yeah. So, again, part of like the Coast Guard thing is we got to go through a safety debrief before we leave port every morning or push off the dock, which includes, going over the fact it's a drug-free vessel and whatnot.
Right.
So there's some basic stuff with that. But even though I joke constantly with people and tell my clients that it's their boat for their 7 or 8 hours, I'm just the guy driving it, like, it's my rig. And I am trying to control everything I can control. There's a lot out of my control.
100%.
So, there's definitely a lot of protocols. I try to do the same exact things every single day, the same exact way. And if I can continue to essentially do my simple checklist items every single day, then I can usually control the vast majority of things. But you do get variables, so some people might be a first-time hunter, or somebody, I mean, I've had to put fishermen in timeout, until I'm serious, you tell them, hey, you sit down over there, and if you get up, like, we're done, we're going in.
Taking your crayons away from you real quick.
Well, I mean, fishing people get drunk, and duck hunting is a little different story.
Solid point.
Like, usually if you, not necessarily even maybe telling the drunk guy that, but telling his buddies, like, hey, we're going to have to go in if you can't calm him down, and again, they're just having fun. It's not with malicious, intent.
You don't mean to be that guy.
You don't want somebody to get hurt out there,
right.
So you just got to make sure you speak up and educate the most you can.
That's one of my buddies. He fishes Lake Michigan. I think he's out of Chicago. He's like a big salmon out there. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, man, every summer, like almost every single day. I don't think he does it anymore, but he was part of like a charter business, whatever he was out that way. And every morning he'd be leaving the dock, and some guy passed out already, or throwing up over the boat, or it happens so quick. And
when they're cracking beers at 5:30 in the morning, and I can tell it's not their first one.
Right,
I know it's going to be an interesting day.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like you said though, it's they're out there to have a good time. You don't want to shut it down, but at the same time, their safety, it falls back on you at the end of the day.
It does. It's like every charter captain is always one accident away from losing it all, so you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
It's just you are, like, safety is my number one priority. I tell everybody, again, I tell people the same exact thing every single day.
Right.
So I always say safety is my number one priority. If anytime you don't feel safe today, please tell me and your buddies. Maybe we'll make fun of you a little bit, but we're going to have fun. That's number 2, and it's a joke, but it's reality. Like, I got to get them back to dock every single day.
Yeah.
And they need to be safe. They need to be happy.
Especially at Erie too, man. There's so many people out there where it's like, even for the fishing year, you see these guys out there in the little like 12-foot boats, or like, any way they can get out there. And kudos to the people that are doing it. I mean, just trying to do it,
Sure.
But at the same time, like, I can't tell you how many people are out there on some rough water. It takes one bad wake.
It does.
I mean, I've had like in my duck boat, where the Coast Guard goes by, flying by you, Border Patrol, Coast Guard, whoever it was, they go by you and just creating a huge wake in the middle of all the boats and go right over top of the boat. Like, there's so many different variables out there that people just don't even think of.
No, they don't. And that's, you always have to have your head on a swivel.
For
when you're
sure.
out there.
For sure.
It's not just you, it's other people too. Like you just said, that big wake. I've had close friends that have passed away on the lake, very experienced boaters and things. And, the reality is that you're never 100% safe out there. So as long as you're always respecting it, then you're leg up, on the guy that isn't. again, control what you can control, because there's a lot of variables that you can't.
And that's the thing around us anyway. It's, very unfortunate, obviously, but, every year, every summer, a little bit of liquid courage in some people, and they just do not care. And it takes, you got these guys fishing on the front of the boat, which I'm usually on the front, but like you said, head on a swivel, making sure everything's going good. And that's just with like my dad and close friends and family and stuff. But, you could be looking one way and that weight comes the other way. Some guys trying to net a fish or whatever it is, and there it is, that weight that kind of pushes you right over. You just never know. It's that split
You can get
second.
surprised real quick.
And especially with what people are wearing in the springtime, I mean, you basically, if you put water in your boots or whatever you have on, you're wearing cinder block as feet, and you're going. You're toast.
Yeah, if you ever look at the pictures of me in duck season or cold water fishing, I'm always wearing a big Mustang float coat. Like it's
smart though, man.
I might look like an idiot. I might look like a Michelin man, but it's one of those things that gives me just a little bit more peace of mind.
For sure. So,
So,
but you did just get a dog.
I did.
Which is awesome. I wish you would have brought him. Him, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wish you would
He
have
would've
brought
loved
him.
that.
Yeah, I should have told you, but how's that going?
Awesome.
First dog?
First dog in a long time. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
how's like the training going? Where are you kind of at with it? I seen you took it out hunting a couple times this year.
So he's 8 months old this month, and he probably hunted more than 99% of guys duck dogs did this year. Now, him hunting in year one was just spending the full day on the boat, right? It wasn't
Which is
actually
huge.
retrieving birds and stuff. Like, my goal with him was to get him comfortable everywhere, whether it be driving the truck to Florida or from Ohio, or spending 14 hours on the lake, like in my riverboat or my lake boat, like just constantly putting him in different environments, and spending as much time as I possibly can with him. He is by no means a perfectly polished dog at 8 months, and there will be many, dog trainers that say everything I'm doing is crazy. Why would you shoot guns over a dog that's 4 months old or 3 months old, and things. But the reality is I have a dog that just wants to be obedient and has a crazy prey drive, is smart, and is my little buddy, So
half the time they're smarter than you, so you just better
he
watch out.
absolutely
Man.
is,
It's tough.
But no, it's cool. I'm actually a little bummed about my river stuff, because it just kind of hit me in this last month. Like, every day I've been on the boat pretty much since I got him in September. He's been with me. Well, in the river, it's a 19-foot boat with me and 2 clients. There's not room for him, so he's going to have to stay home for this next month, which is going to be tough for me. But probably tougher for me than it is him. But that's all right.
But the hard part is, though, and not to even shoot you in the foot here, but like, he knows where you're going.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, he knows you're going to be out there on the boat.
It's sure.
Just, I seen you out there a bunch this year. That was the same way when I got my black lab. I'd walk her, and I'd take her to Point Malay, just walking the dike wall, so all the smells and scents and the birds flying everywhere, just to get her out. And, when you train a dog, you can never train it for the hunt.
No, you're right.
You
can try to emulate it.
You never can.
Exact.
Yeah, you never can. And the same thing with like my first dog, Ellie, and same with Rip, our red lab. I'm not looking for like a well-polished dog. If it's a good house dog at the end of the day, that's all that matters for me. If that dog stays, listens, and brings a bird 10 foot closer, I'm good. As long as she's having a good time, I want her out there. Obviously everybody wants that, that hold and heel all the time. Yeah, obviously that's nice, and you work on that as much as you can, but it's tough to train like nonstop all the time.
It is. I mean, because they need activity every day. You have to stimulate them mentally every day.
Right.
Otherwise you lose the step. So
what kind of are you looking for in what's his name?
Boone.
Yep. What are you looking for in him? Like, are you looking for like, some guys go for the field trials? I mean, what kind of?
No. I'm looking for a dog that is an awesome companion on hunts. That is there to work, but at the same time is a good house dog as well.
Right.
So I kind of want the perfect balance. I am training him for trial style things, but I am not training him like any trainers train for field trials. That's more of me trying to prepare him for hunting season. The reality of what it's going to be in the fall. So, but no, I'm happy.
Which has got to be tough too, because I mean that's all water hunts, right?
Yeah. So he's even though he'll be on the boat with me for a lot of the layout hunts, he's not going to be retrieving. My boat is too high-sided.
Right.
Lake Erie, as you know, is pretty volatile. The birds that get shot are shot, with a ton of long line decoys and rough
getting
waves
tangled
and
up
things.
in it. Yeah.
It's going to be more about just having him out there. I mean, really, I visualize him on my fun hunts, my marsh hunts and stuff before our season starts. I mean, that's really where he's going to get his true hunting work,
That'll be good then.
The rest of the time, he's going to be a boat dog.
Right.
Like, I literally have a social media called Boone on a Boat.
Oh, you do?
Him. Oh, yeah. It's just him on a boat.
I'll have to follow that.
Thank my wife for that. But
yeah.
But no, it's just, it's cool having
that's a good
dog
excuse to blame your wife for that, though, too, even though you probably...
I mean, I definitely... I'm the one that takes all the videos and stuff, so...
That's it's funny, though, too, because, it's all about, like, the dog safety and stuff in the boat, obviously, as well as, clients or whoever it may be. Ellie, my black lab, she likes to sit right on the front of the boat, her ears flopping in the wind. I get so much haze for, like, her on the front of the boat, but in reality, like, that dog alone, I'll see her, like, bend her knees. Like, she knows, like, the waves are coming. Like, obviously it takes that one time for her to flip over the side, but you have them out there every single day. They get used to all that kind of stuff, absolutely. I feel like.
Just got to be safe,
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not doing nothing crazy. I'm not jumping beaver dams with her on the front.
Not flipping donuts and running full bore all the time.
And if it is too bad, obviously she's in the back with me. But just like you said, the companionship, like with them being out there with you, is just you can't beat it. You never will beat it.
You're right. You can't compare it to anything. It's awesome.
No. But I don't know. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of hit on? I mean, we hit on kind of a lot with the Maumee and Ohio in general. Any questions that you had or?
No, I mean, I think that, like you and I talked, I'm excited about the spring here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, thankful for a good waterfowl season. And I'm ready to do some serious fishing. Yeah. I had the lake boat gone for the month of February. I had a bunch of electric work done to it, switched over to lithiums and put a bunch of rigid light kits and things.
That's nice.
Did some cleaning up of some battery work. And then the river boat I had taken down to Georgia and Florida in January to hunt Lake Seminole, which was pretty cool. And now all the hunting stuff is out of that. So it's the fine-tuned things. I mean, I know that you say you're not a mud boat man, but you know a little bit about the world, and what that world is it's performance mods and juicing these suckers.
I was going to say, well, it's deep pockets is what I get out of it. So, yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know about deep pockets. The only time I feel like I got to have deep pockets is I constantly break things. But
that's what I'm saying. Like it's. I feel like every mud motor owner is like, I just redid my motor this year. I'm doing this to this. I'm doing that to that. This broke last year, and it's like, dude.
Just little tweaks here and there.
I'm sure glad I'm dealing with my 4-stroke motor on the back of my boat. Question for you.
Yeah.
You do a lot of fishing, obviously, so I'm guessing you're not a big turkey hunter or anything.
Oh, I love the turkey.
Do you?
Yeah. So one of the other things about me not running the Maumee River the last week of April
is for turkey.
I've always gone down the last weekend in April to southeastern Ohio to turkey hunt. Well,
oh wow.
Jess and I got married. It'll be 2 years come May 1st, but we got married down there while turkey hunting.
Wow.
And we turkey hunted in the morning and then got married in Cooper Hollow, which is a state park down there.
It's a hell of a day right there.
That was awesome. My 2 days turned into 3 days, turned into 4 days, and now it's stretched to 5 days just to chase. Chase turkeys in the hills. Man. Oh, it's a great time.
That's my biggest thing once, before turkey season starts, I'll get on the boat as much as I possibly can. But as soon as them gobbles start going off in the morning, it's hard to jump in a boat.
Because of the charter business, I'm limited to when I can get down there. And I just hope that, honestly, I hate saying this, I hope it gets cold.
And nobody wants to go out fishing.
No, I just hope all those birds aren't done by the time I get a chance on them. So
we just got our first picture today. I put a cell camera out there the other day. And funny enough, what shed is it there? I think it's that real dark one up at up one more, that one right there. So I walked the tree line, and that thing's laying right out in the middle of the field.
That thing is sweet. Gnarly looking.
It's a pretty sweet one for sure. But so I put the camera out there, and today was the first picture. Well, last night was, but the first strutter out in the field was this afternoon. I think it was like right before you got here, actually.
Was it? Wow.
And fired me right back up. And that's what was such a shame that I had to miss again this year was the NWTF, man. We talked about it before and stuff. It's just, I want to get down there so bad just to experience it all.
Right. You just got to make it a priority. Get there next year. It's got to happen.
I'm going to try to, man. I'm going to try to.
Don't try. Succeed.
Very solid point. Very solid point. But anybody that's trying to reach out to you, you want to drop your...
Yeah, sure. So you can reach out to me. I mean, the biggest thing right now is just call me. 419-575-6986. Again, 419-575-6986. It's the meat. I'm about to start the craziness, right? So usually the phone is the easiest way. Of course, we have Facebook, so Fish and Fowl Adventures on Facebook. My Instagram is just me, Zach George 1, but it's tied to Fish and Fowl. I don't know. I just, one of those things, I didn't want to create a whole different one, so I just kept that separate. But the website is fishandfowladventures.com. Fowl is FOWL, because we are hunting waterfowl, right? But no, it's, I'm available if you need me, if you got any questions. Maumee River's fully booked, but the phone's still ringing and people are asking questions, and I have no problem ever answering, any of that stuff. I just talked to a guy from New York the other day for like 30 minutes, just kind of telling him how to fish, because I can't take him out, so I can't teach him in person this year, but I want to make sure if he comes, he has a good time, so. It's
a solid point that you just made, though. It's like there's so many people in the industry that, or maybe they're just getting into it or not even around here to ask about it, but there's so many people that are just afraid to. And it's like, there's so many people in the industry that are just so willing to give the knowledge and just everything to the person if they just ask.
Yep. And don't be afraid to ask. I mean, I always say, man, I love talking hunting and fishing. So if you got any questions, just shoot me a call. If I can talk to you, I will. And if I don't get back to you right away, sorry, I'm busy. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, but.
What about, you going to drop your OnlyFans at all in here?
No, I don't have one of those. No.
I don't know if
Boone on a boat.
I don't know if you and Cole all had an OnlyFans going yet or not, or if that's in the making, whatever. That's your guys' business. But it sounds like from the phone call before we started here, you and Trav are going to be starting one up here soon. So that's your guys' own thing. But Zach, I really appreciate you coming up, man, spending the time. Glad right before fishing season, before you guys get busy and stuff, and it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. Yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours on that.
I know. We just had an hour fly by, or an hour and a half. I don't even know. So, but I appreciate you having me.
Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in on this week's podcast, and until next week, thanks, guys.